You're now listening to the Tax Smart REI podcast, the number one tax podcast for real estate investors. Hey, thanks for tuning into this week's episode of the Tax Smart REI podcast. Today we're joined with Kriss Berg, the car wash guy who pays almost no income tax, to discuss why he chose to start investing in car washes in the first place, the car wash business model and financing, how he uses car washes to pay almost no taxes on his e-commerce business, the future of the car wash industry, and much more. If you ever thought of investing in car washes or any type of boring business, then this episode's for you. We'll get into all of that in just 1 minute. Attention real estate investors, are you ready to maximize your investment returns and minimize your taxes? Then look no further than ELB Consulting, leaders in cost segregation. If you're serious about keeping more money in your pocket, then this is for you. Why choose ELB Consulting? ELB's fully engineered cost segregation studies dive deeper, bringing more tax benefits to the forefront, ensuring that no detail is overlooked, allowing you to keep more money where it belongs, in your pocket. Experience the ELB advantage with detailed cost segregation reports, a proven track record, and lifetime audit defense. Don't leave money on the table. Discover how cost segregation studies can lead to significant tax savings for you. To learn more, contact Bill Smith at bill@elbcostseg.com. Again, to learn more, contact Bill Smith by emailing him at bill@elbcostseg.com. That's all for now. We'll jump right into today's episode. Hey, Kriss, thanks for joining us today. Would you be able to give our listeners an overview of your background and how you got started in the car wash business?
Yeah, so I've been an entrepreneur for 21 years now. I've done a little bit of everything. I was in the construction business. I was in the solar business. Now my primary businesses are online e-commerce businesses. And about 3 years ago, I started looking for kind of a side gig. I had some extra time and some extra money, and I was sort of bored with what I found out there at the time. You know, crypto was red hot, and there was all this stuff. You could make money doing whatever it is with crypto that those guys do. They seem to be creating money out of thin air. But I wanted something more tangible. You know, the e-commerce business was really, it kind of feels like vapor sometimes, right? You're sort of pushing around pixels. So I wanted something tangible. And at the time, self-storage was red hot with people, especially in the Twitter circles I was running in. So I looked at that for a while and sent out a bunch of letters trying to find off-market deals, and I just never got anywhere with it. But in the process, I met a realtor or a commercial real estate agent, and he had kind of floated the idea of this car wash. And so after not finding any deals, I went back to the car wash and realized that the owner wasn't doing really any of the basics that you should do for really any business. Like, it didn't exist on Google Maps. He hadn't raised the prices in a decade. The guy had actually started a bank, so he had much bigger fish to fry. So a partner and I just realized, well, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit with this thing. So we bought it. It was about $650,000. And within 6 months, we had grown it by about 40%. And that first year overall, we grew it by about 70%. We put it on Google Maps. We raised the prices. We improved the overall customer experience. And we just realized that was pretty cool. And it wasn't that hard. So we found another car wash, and then we found another one. So now we have three, and we're in negotiations to buy three more over the next, hopefully, 6 months or so.
Kriss, is that normally like a franchise that you're buying, or is that like kind of its own standalone company car wash?
The ones that we target, if you can picture the ones that have the self-serve bays, and then usually on one end, there's an automatic that's usually a touch-free car wash. These are overwhelmingly mom and pop operations, and mom and pop kind of treated them as passive investments. As you guys know, most real estate is not passive. So they would show up maybe once a day, sometimes just a couple times a week, and clean up the trash or whatever. And that's just not nearly enough attention for these places. If you give these places more attention, you'll get more business. So I'm sorry, I forgot the question. I went off on a tangent there.
Yeah, just the franchise versus like the mom and pop.
Not a franchise. No, there are some franchise tunnels. Well, the tunnel is the long car wash that moves cars through on a conveyor belt that are very popular to be built these days. There are some, like Quick Quack is a franchise, but for the most part, we're actually thinking about creating a franchise for this particular space because there's nobody really doing that.
Nice. And are you in Colorado?
Yeah, I'm in Colorado, Western Colorado. So we're looking at deals all over Colorado.
Awesome. Yeah, franchise seems to make a lot of sense if there's nothing in the space. It seems like, whenever I watch Shark Tank, somebody figures out a good business model and then franchises it out. It's like the next step, right? And it seems like this would
Yeah.
be like a perfect fit.
Yep. That's the move, apparently.
When it comes to the business model and how this business generates cash flow, would you be able to kind of walk us through what the business model for such a business looks like?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Basically, people show up and clean their own cars in the self-serve bays. A lot of those people still use cash. So there's a change machine out front and they plunk in their dollars and they get out their quarters and they wash their cars. One of our primary strategies is to convert these places as much as possible to credit card payments. The average order value for somebody who's using quarters is about $2.70. The average credit card user is spending almost $9. And then the average tap pay user, which you can do with your phone or a credit card, they're spending almost $11. So the more people use their credit cards, the more money we make. So we make it very, very easy to use credit cards. And then in the touch-free bays where there's an automatic car wash, we're also putting in memberships that are similar to the big tunnel wash strategy. So it's very simple. We have vacuums and stuff like that. There's free vacuums for the members. So it's an extremely simple business model. Advertising, marketing is incredibly simple. There's nothing really special here. Anybody who's run a business before or thought about running a business will look at our strategies and say, wow, this is really simple. I don't know why more people aren't doing this.
What's the most difficult part of your business then?
There's a few things that they can be crime magnets because there's a fair amount of cash involved. People like to break in and try to steal the money. One of the places that we bought, somebody had actually driven a front end loader into the mechanical room trying to steal money, and it completely knocked it out of business for like 6 to 8 months. That's probably the biggest risk, but there's ways to mitigate that security. And we have an audit system so that our attendants can't steal from us. Other than that, I think most of your listeners are probably real estate investors. This is sort of that weird Venn diagram between real estate and a business because there's somebody on staff at our properties 7 days a week-ish, pretty much 8 to 4. So you have labor, you have the issues that come along with that, and you have a lot of equipment, and that equipment requires maintenance. So it's kind of a hybrid between real estate and a business.
Seems like if you could take out the coins and the cash from the business and kind of reduce some of that theft, it sounds like, and that kind of solves one of those issues too with credit cards.
Yeah, so there's some people who have tried that. Unfortunately, a lot of the people who wash their own cars are kind of in that unbanked population. A lot of immigrants, a lot of blue collar people who just don't, and a lot of older people. There's a whole generation, like probably our parents, who still have a pretty healthy distrust of phone apps and even credit cards to some degree because, their credit card number got stolen once back in 2004 or something. So cash is still a really popular part of the business. It's actually 40 to 50% of our income. So getting rid of that is really scary for us. It's worth the stretch to continue to carry cash for now. We're hoping that'll change, hopefully in the future.
That makes a lot of sense because there's so many people who, depending on their age bracket or their generation, who still are using old technology. Believe it or not, I was in Penn Station in New York City on Sunday this past week, and I saw somebody using a payphone. Like, I didn't even know they had payphones still, but somebody was using a payphone, and as you could guess, it was an older gentleman. And I was honestly shocked. I was honestly shocked to see that, but it just goes to show that there's still people stuck in their ways. And if you rip the cash completely out of the business, to your point, you might be leaving an entire demographic of people who might otherwise use the car wash. Don't use credit cards.
Absolutely. There's no question our business would go down. So yeah, that's crazy that there's payphones still operating. Even if you see one, you assume that it's broken, right? That's crazy.
Yeah. I know this guy was talking, but when it comes to the financing aspects of these car wash, are you acquiring them with equity or debt? Are you raising capital for them? Like, how are you ending up financing these?
Yeah, that's one reason I really like it, because when I was looking for side gigs and businesses to buy, a lot of these businesses are really hard to finance for banks because they're, especially like an e-commerce business where there's almost no assets. And there's a lot of businesses that are only financeable by SBA financing. That's a huge, long process. The car washes are actually relatively easy. We financed the first one with 25% down, 75% LTV. And then the second one we actually financed with 20% down, 80% LTV. And then the third one is going to be something similar. It's going to be kind of this phased, it's sort of a complex financing deal, but it's going to end up to be 80% LTV too. The banks really like real estate, right? And there are some SBA financing options for these deals, and those programs are actually easier to get than some of the SBA 7A programs or stuff like that. Is actually really long process to get through it. There's huge interest rates. I know people that are paying 11%. So there's other 538 programs through the SBA is you could actually put down 10 or 15% in many cases. That's what we're going to do on one of these deals this year. So the financing is actually one of the easier parts because it's anchored by real estate. It's cash flowing real estate. The banks are still primarily concerned with the debt service, right? Can you pay for the loan out of the business and how much is left over for you as the owner? That's the case with really any kind of commercial loan that they're doing. But in this case, we found the financing process to be relatively easy.
That's great. Yeah, that sounds very common for a lot of real estate, multifamily, single family, investment properties, things like that. As far as, so obviously we're a tax podcast, so we got to ask you some tax questions here. But as far as you as a car wash owner in thinking about taxes, obviously that can be for a lot of people, and being an entrepreneur, big expense of yours every year. How do you think about kind of tax strategies? Kind of what are you using to reduce taxes kind of via the car washes?
Yeah, so that was a complete shock to me. So we bought two in 2022, and my online businesses generate upper six figures for me. And so my tax bill was formidable every year. And so after I bought these car washes, I emailed my accountant December of that year. And it's always the same conversation, like, okay, what's the damage here? How much do I owe? I've made quarterly payments throughout the year. There's always a little extra because we always kind of undershoot on those quarterly payments. So I was asking essentially like, what's the damage here? And she wrote back a short while later. It said, you're not going to owe anything. So I kind of did the cartoon like, blah, 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 like, what do you mean I won't owe anything? And immediately called her and I said, what are you talking about here? And she said, well, there's this thing called bonus depreciation, which you guys are very aware of. And I was marginally aware of when I bought the car washes, but I had no idea that car washes in particular fall into this very, very narrow crack in the bonus depreciation thing. If you've done apartments or self-storage or whatever, you know that to take advantage of bonus depreciation, you've got to go get a cost segregation study. And an engineer has to break down the HVAC and the building and the roof and the parking lot and all this stuff and figure out what is 15-year equipment and younger and what is classified as older than 15-year equipment. Anything 15 and younger is bonus depreciable, right? For whatever reason, with car washes and also gas stations, don't ask me why, everything on that property is 15-year or younger equipment, building, everything. All the improvements to a car wash. So all you have to do, you don't need a cost segregation study. All you have to do is figure out the price you paid for the car wash and what the ground is worth, what the actual dirt, the real estate is worth. Subtract those two numbers, and that is eligible for bonus depreciation. So in 22, when it was still at 100%, we spent $1.3 million on car washes. The lots weren't very much. We had $1 million deduction. So my taxes went away. In fact, I haven't paid taxes since 2021. I'll get everything. We made quarterly payments last year as well, although we reduced those. Again, I won't owe anything from last year. And this is on an upper six-figure salary where I was used to paying $200, $300, sometimes $400,000 a year in taxes. So it is a game changer for taxes for me. And it was kind of an accident. I didn't really realize that it was going to be like this. So now I'm completely hooked on car washes. I'm like, let's find some more car washes to buy, even though bonus depreciation is, slowly phasing down, but it's still a very good deal. And these car washes are very, very nice. They have a cash flow component. There's an appreciation component, and then there's the tax component. For me, that's the triple threat. And that's why I'm going all in on them.
Hey, are you tired of working with generalist CPAs that tell you can't use the real estate professional status, the short-term rental loophole, or cost segregation studies? Or worse, have no idea what these things are? If so, it's time to elevate your game and work with a CPA firm that gets it. Here at Hall CPA, we worked with thousands of investors, helping them save millions of dollars in taxes through proactive tax strategy and planning, tax preparation, and outsourced accounting solutions. So if you're ready to elevate your game, make tax filing painless, and save thousands of dollars in taxes, what are you waiting for? Just head on over to www.therealestatecpa.com/podcast to request an initial consultation today. We are accepting clients for the 2023 and 2024 tax years, so if you're looking to make a change, you have nothing to lose. Again, you can request an initial consultation by visiting www.therealestatecpa.com/podcast. We look forward to hearing from you and learning more about your situation and how we can help. But for now, we'll dive right back into today's episode.
That's awesome. And I just want to highlight something for everyone listening, that Kriss did not buy car washes just for tax savings. That is something that obviously people come to us and they're like, hey, how do I save taxes? And it's like, hey, here's your options, right? We want to customize that to, hey, here's what you've got going on. Here's some various options for you. You pick, that kind of thing. But it's just funny. And I like to always highlight, especially when we have guests who come on and it's like, I kind of fell into this like whole bonus depreciation thing and offsetting my income from my other businesses. I just want to highlight that for people, that you weren't letting the tail wag the dog. You first, sounds like, found a good investment. It was real estate. You liked that you could finance it. All those things that you talked about just a few minutes ago. And
Absolutely.
then the taxes kind of came into place, but that was not criteria number one. So just want to highlight that for people. Any comments on that?
That's dead on. When people look at these deals now, because I'm a car wash guy on Twitter or whatever, and people send me deals, a lot of people make the mistake of looking at a deal and underwriting it so that it really won't make in any cash flow, that it's just a tax play and then an appreciation play. That's not going to work, because these car washes need maintenance. They need labor. You're going to have some surprise CapEx, right? Like you need to fix some pumps. You need to redo the parking lot. You need new signage, stuff like that. So it's got to have healthy cash flow first and foremost. And any bank that's going to want to lend on the property is going to say the same thing. So cash flow still number one, but the returns, especially when you factor in the tax benefits and everything, I mean, we're looking at 40, 50% annualized rate of returns because of these, because of everything, because of the cash, because the way the value add that we do, all the things that we do to these car washes now. And then on top of that, the tax savings is awesome too. So, but the tax savings is going to go away, right? The bonus depreciation thing, presumably phased out, hopefully comes back, whatever, but these deals are still good. Once you get into the car wash and you start upgrading the equipment, then you can get into Section 179 stuff. Totally different conversation. I don't want to go too deep on that. You guys probably know better than I do, but there's other advantages there too.
Section 179 is definitely good for some businesses, and I assume car washes too. I've not taken too much of a look into it because most people have been using bonus depreciation because it can allow you to take the loss. With Section 179, you're capped at the income the business produces. So most people have been passing that over, at least from what I've seen. One thing I do want to comment on here, because I know we have a lot of listeners. So I'm on like forums, and I receive a lot of emails from sponsors and whatnot who are waiting to file their tax returns right now, because they're hoping bonus depreciation makes a comeback with this proposed bill that has been floating around for several months. And just wanted to comment that from our understanding, that bill is dead in the water. And not to get political or anything like that, but I believe that bill was killed off until after the election. So we will have to wait and see until after the election what is going to happen with bonus depreciation. So for everybody out there who's holding off on filing their taxes, please understand that the chances of that bill getting passed or anything similar getting passed between now and probably next year are very, very slim. All right, so go ahead, file your taxes. You'll probably be good. But I just wanted to make that comment. There's a lot of people out there still like, fingers crossed this is going to come back this year. It just does not look like that's going to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what Congress does anymore. Like I don't see any bills getting passed. So the odds of this one getting addressed are really low. So
Yeah, and I wanted to add one other thing too. So as far as bonus depreciation going away, yes, that's true. I think just for people who, even if we do phase down to zero by year 2027, if nothing changed, the thing to keep in mind for you or any other listener is doing a cost seg or getting that 5 or 15-year property, you're still able to depreciate that property using makers over 5 years or over 15 years. So it's still faster than, say, another type of commercial property that's going to be over 39 years, or residential, say, apartment buildings or single family home over 27 and a half years. So it's still better. You're still getting more depreciation up front, but we've just been in this unique time period where 2018 effectively to 2022, we've had 100%. So yeah, it's a unique time where we got that, but just don't forget, we still get, even if it's zero, over 5 years, over 15, that's still faster than 39 and 27 and a half. So just want to highlight that. So we'll see if that comes about. Tom, I agree with you. Probably not anything that's going to affect 2023 tax year. Maybe it's a 2024 thing, as we're still in this year, but to think it's going to impact over halfway through the year now, prior year tax year, I just think that's also unrealistic. So absolutely agree on those comments.
yeah.
So switching gears a little bit, I know you mentioned before that the former owners of a lot of these car washes, neglect the business and aren't maximizing the profits or anything like that. And you and your team have been putting a little bit more time behind it. Are there tools or systems that you're using to automate some of the things that are going on within the car wash to, I guess, minimize your footprint or optimize the property in a sense?
Yeah, we put in a system that's basically a point of sale system that counts every quarter that comes in so that you know every dollar that comes on the lot. And so that automates the audit so that nobody can steal from you. That's one of the main things we do. But it also allows people to pay with their phone and their credit cards, which, as we mentioned before, is massive revenue booster. And then we do have things like we put in better chemicals, better soaps, so that the cars are getting cleaner. A lot of the older owners, they would just tight fist everything. And they thought the lower the cost on everything, the better. And they were doing that with the chemicals and giving really bad washes. And people would say, oh, my car's still dirty or whatever. And they would give you a bad review and they'd never come back. We found that investing in things like that actually makes for a better customer experience, means they're going to come back more and potentially get a membership. So as far as like automation and stuff, it's still kind of an old school business. There's not a ton you can do. It's still water, chemicals, drains. It's one of these businesses it's not going to change much over the next 20 years. So that's a good thing, right? It's going to be here. In my e-commerce business, things change so fast. If somebody asks me, are you going to be around in 5 years? I'm like, boy, I hope so. I don't know. We might get wiped out by Amazon or something. I don't know. We might, maybe Facebook just drops a hammer on everybody. Maybe TikTok, whatever. But with car washes, it's like, yeah, there's going to be dirty cars forever. I have people commenting all the time, like, what about self-driving cars? And I'm like, those will need to be cleaned too. So I don't think that's going to be that prevalent in the next 50 years. It's one of those things like the cash conversation. Like there'll be self-driving cars, but there's still going to be humans in those cars and they're going to want a clean car. So there's not a ton of tech. It's more kind of the blocking, tackling, marketing, improving the customer experience, modifying the prices.
So I know you mentioned before, Kriss, that you had considered jumping into real estate, couldn't find any deals, and eventually landed on car washes. I know there's a lot of similar businesses out there these days. There's laundromats, there's fitness centers, like all of these kind of tangible businesses that kind of run on a similar business model. Have you considered any of those, or are you at this point all in on car washes?
We considered all of them, really. Looked at laundromats, and the laundromat was, at a car wash, if you have 4 bays and an automatic, you've got 4 pumps, and then you've got some automatic machinery. And if one bay goes down, well, then you just jump over the other one. I looked at a laundromat, and there was literally 50 machines in there. And At any given time, 5 of them were broken. And it seemed actually more complex. Now, I have a good friend, Tyler Purcell, who does laundromats. He loves it. He's actually building brand new facilities. But it just seemed like a complexity that I didn't really want to mess with. Plus, you have an interior space where people can, if one person floods their washing machine, you can shut down the whole facility, right? So it was one of those things. I know that laundromat owners will push back on this, but it just seemed like something I didn't really want to get into. And I was shocked at how low the revenue was on some of them. Some of them that seemed very busy were doing $50,000 a year. I mean, our combined car washes, the 3 of them will do about $800,000, and that's 3 facilities, right? So I'm all about leverage right now, especially time leverage. I have 2 little kids. I have 2 other businesses. I don't want to spend 20, 30, 40 hours a week on this side gig. I spend 4 hours a week on it. Unless I'm buying another car wash, then it's probably closer to 10 or 20. But these car washes are extremely time leveraged because we have people on site. They fix the stuff. We just hear about the big issues, maybe an unhappy customer or something major's broken down. They call us and tell us, and they just get it done. So it's all about leverage for me.
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to ask you, Kriss, before we move on to another question here, as far as when you buy these properties, the car washes, are you, because I kind of see it as 2 ways. You've got essentially the car wash, the real estate, right? The land, and then all the equipment. And then you've got essentially the business inside that is running kind of the team or whoever who's kind of servicing kind of the real estate and the customers. Are you always buying both kind of the business and the real estate? Or are you sometimes looking to just do the real estate itself and then lease to like some other owner?
No, because we want to be operators. That's where a lot of the alpha, frankly, that we make is made. There are people who do the passive thing where they just do a sale lease back, right? They buy the property and then they lease it back to the people who are already there. For me, the huge advantage here, like we spoke about before, was some of the tax advantages. The thing about that is a car wash is an active business if you're active in it, right? The reason that I get to write off the taxes to my other businesses is because I'm active in that business. If I were simply buying the real estate, and you guys can confirm with this, I don't think I'd have that advantage because it would be technically a passive. And I'm not a real estate professional. I don't spend anywhere near 50% of my time on real estate. So the advantage is that I'm invested in a car wash, which is an active business. That active business's paper losses go against my other businesses' actual gains. So that's the reason we didn't consider that. We really want the whole thing. And the big picture here is that we're hoping to gather maybe 10, 20 locations over the next 10 years or so. And then potentially we have just this huge cash flowing chain. We can refi against that cash flow and buy other properties, or we could potentially sell it to a strategic buyer who wanted to kind of copy our model and take it to a much bigger scale.
And that's the thing that I wanted to tease out for people, especially listeners, is that some people will hear this and be like, oh, great, I just need to go buy the car wash and then I'll lease it to whoever and I get all these losses. No, like unless you're a real estate professional or meeting the real estate professional status,
yeah,
you can't do that. So because basically you're materially participating in your operation business as a car wash owner, right? And you're basically saying, hey, this is kind of all in one, the same thing. Then we can say, hey, the whole thing, the whole shebang here is all going to be considered non-passive. So just, I like to tease that out because really it's like 2 things, the real estate and the operating business, whereas some people are just buying the real estate and then they're leasing it to someone else. So I always just like to, even in my writing on like LinkedIn, I try to show that distinction. And I think that's an important concept for any listener who's thinking about buying car washes. So thank you for walking through that with us.
And I think the IRS actually wants you to materially participate 10 hours a week. So it's actually a nice semi-active business. Semi-passive is what I would call it.
It kind of reminds me a little bit about the short-term rental loophole for everybody who's listening. Like when you have a business that's basically the short-term rental loophole, the 7 days or less or the 30 days or less of a substantial services test, that moves you into the business category. And then when you're actively involved, like Kriss is in a car wash, very similar situation. So just it's another tangible asset business, another real estate kind of based business where you get a lot of tax benefits as long as you're materially participating. You don't have to be a real estate professional. So just something to think about And that kind of transitions into a question that I have is like, say someone was out there looking to invest in a car wash or a similar business, what would be your advice for that person?
I would, first of all, you can look, I really like the website Crexi, CREXI.com, which is a commercial real estate exchange. It's basically a listing website for commercial deals, commercial real estate deals. LoopNet is kind of their main competitor. You probably heard of that. I would go on there and just look. And then when you find a listing on there, I would actually contact the agent and find out what other deals are out there, because there's a lot of commercial real estate deals that never hit those listing services because the agents who list them hate all the tire kicking that goes on. So when they have actually a very juicy deal or sometimes a more lucrative deal, meaning worth more money, they won't list it on there because they don't want to deal with all the people, the flood of emails and phone calls they get. So we found that car wash, the first car wash deal that I bought, it was listed for a while, and then the agent took it off, and it was still for sale, but he just didn't want to deal with the phone calls. So we bought it sort of off market. They were actively selling it, but it wasn't listed anywhere. And we find that with a lot of deals. One of the deals we're looking at now, it's been out of business for about 4 years. It's a car wash. And on the listing, it never once mentions that it's a car wash. And in fact, from the pictures, you can't tell because it's from directly above. But I knew that it was a car wash. And so I reached out, and now we're negotiating with the sellers to reopen it as a car wash. So it's a combination of going to the listing services, but then actually talking to people. And I actually coach people on how to buy car washes. I have a course at taxfreecashcow.com. That's taxfreecashcow.com. And I walk through people how to find the deals, how to finance the deals, how to seal the deal, and then how to run your car wash, all in this course. But one thing I tell people is you probably have a car wash near you that you've been like, what's going on with that thing? It's kind of run down. People are neglecting it. In that course, I can teach you how to find them and then how to propose a deal with them, because odds are if they're neglecting it, they're probably sick of it. And it's probably a secret little cash cow that you could build back up just like we did ours. And so that's one great way to do it is to find off-market deals, that one that you used to love that's gone downhill, or it's tucked behind the gas station and nobody's paying attention to it. Those are actually really good deals to track down.
Would you recommend to newbies or maybe people who are buying just their first or second, would you recommend buying local, something that you could drive to in a certain radius? Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely got to be close to you on your first one. We bought one in Denver. We're in Western Colorado. We bought one in Denver recently, and it was a little bit of a trial by fire doing stuff remotely. Luckily, we have somebody local that could help us with it. But for your first one, definitely the closer to you, the better, because initially you're going to want to be there a little bit. I do have one student who lives in Los Angeles, and he bought it in Columbus. He bought two in Columbus, Ohio, and he has admitted that maybe he shouldn't have done that. But he's doing pretty well with them. But it's definitely tougher, no question.
You know what's interesting about that? So I started like in the syndication world back in 2014, and I went through like masterminds and all that stuff. And a lot of what you're talking about applies to real estate too. And one of the things that one of my mentors told me was you always got to look at the flight time, right? If you live in, say, LA and you have to fly out to Columbus, Ohio, I have to imagine that flight's lengthy. And then on top of that, you might have to go to Columbus and drive somewhere to your location. And naturally, you're not going to do that too often in those cases, or you're going to at least minimize the amount of times you're going to do that. So that's really good advice. And if you're going to be investing out of state, and we always tell investors too, when we work with them on the tax side, like buy your first properties locally if you can. Learn the ropes before you go out of state, because if you go out of state, you're not going to have as much oversight and everything, and you need to learn the ropes. Once you kind of learn the ropes, once you kind of like become proficient, or then at that point, it might be easier to branch out. But I would still say, at least from my personal perspective, even if you're going to branch out, LA to Columbus, Ohio is a little far. LA to maybe Texas, LA to Nevada, LA to, some other local within the region makes a lot of sense. But that's good advice there.
Yeah, totally agree. I think every business can directly benefit from the attention and the energy of the owner, right? You're never going to get that kind of care and attention from an employee. It'll just never happen. So if you're the owner and you're there on a regular basis and you're checking on things and your employees see that and see that you care, well, they're going to care a little bit more. They're going to be a little more accountable. They're going to be a little more diligent protecting the property and protecting your interests. So I do think it should be nearby. And you've got to think about like, well, how often do I really want to go to this place? Right. I coached a guy in Denver who was almost an hour from one of the car washes, and he actually had it under contract. And about his fifth trip out there, there's some other things kind of took the deal down anyway. But his fifth trip out there is like, man, this is a long drive. I don't know how often I want to do this, especially with traffic and like I've got kids. It's a consideration for sure.
Yeah. As you kind of like look forward, just in the near future, kind of distant future, car wash industry as a whole, how do you kind of see it, continuing to evolve or change? I think it's kind of like, real estate, maybe we could say like hasn't changed significantly as well. It is like a type of real estate business, but what other kind of like major evolutions do you kind of see car wash industry moving into?
The big trend, of course, has been the construction of the tunnels. And so people always ask me, why are all these tunnel washes being built? Well, the private equity companies realized they were getting the same tax benefits that I was. And so they were using that to their advantage, building up these huge properties, investing somewhere between $5 to $10 million in each property, and then doing a sale leaseback, this complex financial maneuvering. And now they're getting their comeuppance. They've overbuilt in a lot of places. Right here in my hometown, they've overbuilt. They've figured out that a lot of people don't want these. They don't want to pay that much for a car wash, even if it's a monthly. So, and those car washes also damage a lot of cars. So there is going to be a little bit of comeuppance in that particular sector. We get people who wash their cars at our car washes every day who said, I went to that tunnel and look at what it did. They point out what it did to their car. It scratched the mirror. It broke the mirror, laid a big scratch down alongside, whatever it is. So that part of the industry is going to have to kind of shake out. I think a lot of people will survive, but I would not get into that end of the business. It's got huge players, billions and billions of dollars who can squash you like a bug if you don't know what you're doing. In our end of the business, the self-serve and the touch-free stuff, I think it's just going to kind of tick along. There's not going to be any major upsides, no major downsides. I mean, for the industry overall, I've explained how we can build in upside on a neglected property. But as far as the overall trend of the business, it's probably going to go up 3 or 4% a year or something, maybe 2, right? It's just going to be this kind of steady Eddie thing, which is what I was looking for, because my e-com business, it looks like a heartbeat, like an EKG sometimes, right? We're up, we're down, we're all over the place. This is just steady Eddie. People are going to wash their cars. We had a couple of bad months earlier this year, and we thought, oh boy, what's going on here? Maybe the economy's tanking. Followed it up with 2 phenomenal months, and we're right on track with where we were last year. It's almost to the dollar with where we were last year. It's wild. So that's kind of why I like it. It's kind of boring, and it's great. My other businesses are plenty exciting. I don't need some panic attacks. It's steady Eddie.
We spoke about a lot today, a lot of great insights. I know I took away some stuff from this episode. I'm actually invested in a car wash fund, one of the ones that you're talking about, like one of the tunnel ones, and now I'm a little concerned. But I think they're...
Yeah, a lot of them are doing well, and I do want to disclaim that, but there are some places that they're overbuilding. There's no question. So I really like the Take 5 business model where they're doing a car wash and the oil change. Quick Quack seems to be doing really well. So there's plenty of good players out there, and a lot of them are really crushing it. I mean, some of these guys they've gone from a $5 million operation to a $500 million operation in a short period of time. So there's good and bad with anything, but I do think it's a little late to get in now. If you've gotten in earlier, I think you're okay. But if you were looking now to invest in tunnel car washes, it feels a little played out to me. It feels a little saturated. But, places like Florida, Texas that are growing like weeds, they're building them like crazy, and their membership seems to be great. So there's always places that are doing great.
That's good to know. Hopefully everything works out. I think it will in the end. Is there any final thoughts or insights that you want to share with our listeners before we wrap it up for today?
No, I get a ton of questions about this. People want me to look at deals for them and that kind of thing. I'm on Twitter, which is called X now or whatever. If you just type in car wash guy, I'll appear. I have a yellow bubble behind my head. It's actually Kriss Berg tweets as my handle, but car wash guy will pull up my handle 9 times out of 10. I do consulting for people who are like, I did some for a group of brothers yesterday from Milwaukee who found a car wash. I'll do an hour consult with them. Like I mentioned, I have a course, taxfreecashcow.com. That's the best way to really just learn all that you need to know to buy, finance, and run your first car wash. And that's it. I'm happy to connect with your listeners. I'm really psyched that you guys had me on, and I love answering questions. If people have more questions, hit me up on Twitter. It's the best way.
All right, awesome. So we're gonna drop that stuff in the show notes. I know I'm gonna be checking out the course, and we'll see what we learn there. But thanks, Kriss, for coming on, sharing your knowledge with our listeners. It was a great episode. I learned a lot, and that's about it for today. And we'll see everybody on the next episode of the Tax Smart REI podcast.
Thanks, guys.